On this episode of A State of Control, we talk about the blending of commercial and residential markets, also known as resimercial. What do we have to do to tackle those opportunities? How do we satisfy those clients? And how does the work from home trend fit into this whole big equation? All that and more on A State of Control.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
A State of Control.
A State of Control, episode 84, Cult of Personality.
Support for AVNation is brought to you by Atlas IED, innovative audio solutions for every business environment.
Welcome to A State of Control, an AVNation podcast that highlights the control, programming, and automation aspects of the audiovisual industry. My name's Steve Greenblatt. I'm your host, and thanks for joining us today. This podcast typically covers the commercial industry. I'll have to admit, because of my background and some of the guests that we choose, we probably lean more in that direction primarily. And today we're going to change the pace up a little bit. Back in episode 62, we had covered the residential side of things, and it's about time that we repeat that. So with me, I have a few very knowledgeable guests to discuss about the residential side of the AV industry, as well as how residential and commercial overlap and is been dubbed resimercial. So we'll be talking about that a little bit as well. Before we jump in, though, I'd like to say hi to my partner here at A State of Control. He's none other than Rich Fregosa. Hey, Rich, how are you?
Mellow West Coast greetings. All right, it's good to have friends on here. Yeah, I mean, we always have friends on, but it's good to have our resi side of the friends group. So.
Absolutely. I will first off welcome back a return guest who we had back in that episode 62, and we should have had him back sooner, but nonetheless, he's Stephen Bronner from Pro Audio Georgia. Hey, Stephen, thanks for being with us.
Hey, it's good to be here. It's going to be a great show. Glad to be back.
Thanks for joining us. And last but not least, I have a friend and a guest who's been frequented on other of this AVNation shows, but we haven't had her yet on our show, and I'm glad that we were able to change that today. And she is Heather Sidorowicz from Southtown Audio Video. Hi, Heather. How are you?
I'm great, Steve. I'm pleased as punch to be here. And I agree with Rich. With good friends, it should be a good show.
Awesome. So we're looking forward to that. As I mentioned before, over the years, we have had this divide between the commercial and the residential sides. And there's very distinct differences, the applications, the people that work in those areas, and even some of the equipment, of course, and the techniques that are used. But we're as we've progressed and also with the trend to work from home, we're seeing a lot more of a blend and overlap and these two areas coming together. So that's what I think we'll talk most about today. And Rich, I'll let you start us off. Is this what we're looking at moving forward? Is there going to be more of this unification, or they're going to be more specialists that really are not interested or not able to cross the border between the two areas, let's call it?
Well, what I found is that the resimercial side of things, when we were dealing with it pre-pandemic, it was something that was a little bit more reserved for like a C-level executive suite. You would have, we'd be doing a boardroom or something, and then you'd get, one of the executives, and, there'd be a residence, and there would be the ability to kind of bridge those two together. And that's where we originally started seeing the cross between the commercial and the residential work its way through, where you would have somebody, on that side of the business, and you would work your way into the house. The pandemic flipped things around. And I think what we've discovered is that it changed the makeup of who was going to be using the technology. And so obviously when work from home became part of people's lives for the past 16 months, we found ways to have to bridge the gap, not only with the commercial services that we've been used to for telecommunications, distance learning, all the things that are always in our toolkit, and having to figure out how to do it in people's houses and how to get them productive with a lot of times consumer level goods. And that is where it's been kind of the challenge and the opportunity, right? And it's led some credence to the ability to have a professional come in. I think that the IT companies, for a lot of these companies, figured out that they weren't necessarily going to be able to do it on their own. That if their users could find a way to consolidate and to kind of keep everything at some point consistent, that's when resimercial, I think, really became a useful feature, because we would have all of these local integrators who could step in and help with the process, and everything from displays, the computers, mostly the networking, which I feel was a huge part of it. And then some of these subsystems or items that we didn't consider about originally, which was things like acoustics. The last thing that you wanted during a company-wide Zoom call was for everybody to sound like Bane when they were in their conference, And so learning how to deaden a space and make the work from home experience a professional experience. And that's where resimercial kicked in, I think, is that we had an opportunity to expose the clients and the end users to a professional experience while still being in their home. And there's a lot of room for it. And at the root of it is software. And that's what we've discovered. And so much like a huddle space, a boardroom, a meeting space, a distance learning application, those tools from a programming standpoint became really important to be able to flatten the process. I was just finishing a project yesterday where it is a retirement living community. And it is a fully divisible classroom area in this retirement community, and we've got everything. We've got cameras. We've got when I had people who are in their 60s and 70s talking about live streaming and how they can go ahead and route the Dante audio to their recorder so that they could have and we're actually extremely knowledgeable on the subject. That was cool. And so there's been this quick rise in the technical aptitude of people at home. And so I'm excited about it. I think that we're going to see more of it. And to answer directly to your question, it's definitely part of, we have the Infocom community. I think this is an opportunity for the CEDIA community to be able to work their way in and bridge that gap.
Heather, I'll let you jump in as someone who, as I believe, came from more of the residential side, but has moved over to more of the commercial side. How do you kind of keep straddle that fence, let's say, because I personally have found that it can be difficult. Like when we did programming for both residential and commercial, it was two completely different processes, two completely different approaches. And it just became too challenging because even the people that we had either had a specialty in one or the other. So how do you do it?
Very carefully. So yeah, you are correct. We grew up as a residential company, started in 1984, and I started in about 2001. And so I'm outside of Buffalo, New York, and seeing we had a lot happening, a renaissance, if you will, happening in Buffalo. And when we saw that, we started to point our ship towards the commercial market. But that was also when the residential market was really changing. The rise of Amazon, a Walmart opened down the street. It went from ordering a TV where it became, that used to be a family used to come in and they used to talk about it to, oh, I've got some toilet paper, I'll just get this TV as well. So things really started to change in the residential market. Now, that may be for many people, but it's not for all people. So we call it relationship residential. So the residential that we still handle is not, hey, I'm looking to buy a TV. Not that we wouldn't sell one. It has to do more with, hey, I'm moving into a new home and I want some TVs in multiple places or music throughout or some control or some lighting. So we try to pre-qualify more that way. And if you set it up from the beginning, it's easier in the end. So you're not taking all calls. You're figuring out what is your wheelhouse and passing off what isn't. So we started to drop certain things off our radar. No more satellite dishes, no more antennas. There was a time that we did DVD conversions, so those kind of things that were very time consuming and you just couldn't keep that focus, we let go of. And then when someone would call, we could just guide them to what we call a partner company. As we grew in the commercial market, what we underestimated at that time, the commercial market was the need in the market for attention. So a lot of the AV commercial companies in the area operated like electricians. When it was done, they were gone and there wasn't a lot of hand holding afterwards. We were very used to the hand holding and the customer service. So in 2015, our revenue doubled. And we've been continuing to go higher ever since. Resimercial kind of like, it's almost like this fall back, I feel, in some ways. Our Buffalo market's more of a blue collar mid-market, so I don't think that I'm seeing the same things that Rich is on the West Coast. I still find that, I thought at the beginning of the pandemic, wow, the home office is going to come back. It's really changed, and it's really fascinating to kind of even look at what the house was or is throughout the years, right? When we were all kids, I bet you that there was like the living room where there was no TV or anything. And it was, sometimes there was like the plastic on the couches. We all had that experience of like, this is the room when someone comes over that you sit in that isn't really, you can't see how messy the rest of my house is. And that has evolved. The home office is continuing to evolve as well. But I find in our market that we're still seeing many people on laptops. You see those friends and people who are posting on Facebook and they're in their backyard and they're loving the fact that they can move around and they're not handcuffed to one space. So what became most important in our world? Networking. So networking, if you said, this is, $1,200 or $1,500 for your 2,500 square foot house 16 months ago, they would hang up on you. Today you say it and they say, can you come tomorrow? And we say, no, we're scheduling to the end of the year. But yeah, so we that people, what was once invisible that nobody understood is now very tangible because they understood my kid needs to be online at school while I'm in a board meeting on Teams and Zoom, or they're watching TV, and all of this needs to work. So what didn't exist before, what they didn't understand is now critical. So yeah, it's an interesting place to be.
Stephen, I'll bring you into the conversation, and I know that you also have a very deep client base of residential clients, and also have probably dabbled in other areas. Now, what I guess let's define a little, or give me a couple of examples of what you would consider resimercial type of applications, and do you approach them differently than you do other types of solutions, purely residential, I guess?
Yeah, so resimercial is an interesting crossover because, like the other two have said, this used to be two totally different industries. You had your commercial companies and you had your residential companies, and residential companies would say commercial companies don't have any fun, and commercial companies would say residential companies don't make enough money. So it was a little back and forth, and it was always in good jest because you can have fun in anything you do. So I would say I think the penetration of consumer technology pushed resimercial to where it is. And by saying that, I mean that someone goes home and they can use their Sonos, or they can use their Alexa, or they can do whatever Then they go to work, and these poor IT guys at work are like, they go to work and say, hey, I just want to be able to play some music in my office from my phone. Well, our network's closed down. You can't do that. You can't have someone service. Hey, I want to put an Alexa or a Google Home in here so that I can ask questions. And what ends up happening is this consumer technology that we have to deal with regularly, all of a sudden the corporate IT people are having to deal with, and it really made an interesting crossover. And then it bounced back. So now with everyone stuck at home working, I love what Heather said. Heather hit on the biggest home run that our industry has had in 2 years. For years, we have been telling our clients, everything in your home is built on the network. Everything's built on the network. Don't skimp on the network. And clients have been like, oh no, I can get a XYZ for $50, or I can go to Walmart, or I can do this, or the even worse, God help us, the Comcast or AT&T modem seems to be working fine until it doesn't. So that's the thing is that we have been fighting for years, and I know some clients, they don't care, just spend the money. But for most clients, to tell them that an access point is $1,200, they will go, oh my God, no, I can get a wireless, or I'll just use the Comcast. Like Heather said, now that everyone's been at home and you can actually demonstrate, I have taken, I now use Access Networks. I have taken that product into a client's home and I have put it on a separate channel in the Wi-Fi, and I have said, here, because I've had 2 or 3 clients say they didn't see the value. So I brought it in, set it in place, and said, use your Wi-Fi and let everybody else use my little temporary Wi-Fi, and let me know how it works out. And it sells itself every time. It's kind of like remote controls. This is a little side story, but I am a big fan of having a handheld remote in every room where there's a TV, because watching TV with your phone sucks. So every time I have a client that says, I'll just do everything with my phone, I program inexpensive entry-level handheld remotes for our control system, and I hide them in drawers in the house. I've never had to go pick one up. Every single time I get a call from the husband, the wife, the grandmother, somebody, I can't work this TV. Okay, open the top right drawer, turn the little switch on inside the battery cover, I'll send you a bill. And it never fails. So our clients have done the same thing with our networking, and that has been the absolute home run for us. I honestly feel, I haven't crushed our numbers yet for this year, of course, because number one, I'm too busy. Number two, it's not the end of the year, but I think we're going to see probably a 50 to 60% jump just in networking sales in the first half of the year, and maybe continue through the end of the year. So when you talk about crossover, where does it cross over? It crossed over because now people are demanding the same network reliability throughput that they had at the office. And so when you go to the CEO and you say, hey, this access point is $1,200, they remember the last time they signed on a budget for their office, the access point was $1,200. So now they're like, okay, I get it. And that to me is it. So you had the little, everything in life is kind of cyclical. So you had the cycle of the consumer technology rolling into the office, and the office IT people freaking out, which was awesome. And I got so many calls from friends that are IT specialists that are like, why are all these people asking for this garbage? Welcome to my world. So now it bounced back when everybody came home, and we got to benefit on our side from the increase in networking. And that, to me, that has been the biggest impact, because now our control systems are more solid, the TVs are more solid, everything in the house is more solid, and the customers have finally realized, my customers have finally realized, oh, these more expensive parts are more expensive for a reason. And that has been a huge benefit for us.
It's very interesting, because it seems obvious, but I wouldn't have thought that the networking is really the sell. But it is, as Heather said, it's kind of that invisible technology that people didn't appreciate it until they really needed it. With that said, Heather, I'll jump back to you. When we own the network, and Rich and I did a couple of recent episodes on security, how much of a liability, or how much of a responsibility does security play when we start to have to be in the network, especially when we're dealing with somebody working from home?
Obviously, it's a critical piece. So you need to make sure that you or someone on your team thoroughly understands what they're doing, and we're not just picking out prices and reselling it to our clients. It's our responsibility to make sure that that we're paying attention to not just the company, but who owns that company. Is that safe? What have the breaches been? Are we doing updates? Are we pushing those updates out to our clients? Those things are critical these days. And I think that it would be it would be very scary if we wouldn't do networking if we didn't have the right people in the right seats here. So I think that that's a huge piece to understand. I think just in that whole if you're moving from the residential world to the commercial world, it's things like the first thing I always say to someone if they're looking to do that is you have to make sure you have a great cash flow. Things that people don't think of in the beginning, because when state accounts or large accounts are going to say yes, they're going to give you a PO and you're not billing until after that job is done. That's not going to happen in your residential world. You can ask for a deposit. They're going to give you that deposit. You have the cash to buy the equipment. You're not as liable. So there's other pieces to think about. And I think in the resimercial probably world, that grayer area, if you're doing smaller one-off conference rooms, gyms, those type of things, you could probably still ask for things like deposits. But you have to be careful. But yeah, to go back to the networking question, yes, make sure that you have the right people in the right seats, and make sure that it's, who you're buying from. We use Ubiquity, and it's an American company, and we're pushing out updates as they become available.
Rich, I'll jump over to you. Kind of take us to the next steps. One of the things that I like to talk about is how the user is the same. No matter what you're dealing with, it could be different applications, but the user's the same. From when you look at it from a programming standpoint, and that's a lot of what we talk about here. How does your approach change? What does somebody need to know to kind of play in this market and be able to be comfortable? Because although there may not be two separate animals, now we may have merged them into a unicorn. So it does take a certain type of finesse and understanding and knowledge base and approach.
Yeah, a big part. I started in the custom side of things in the Old West, the Wild West of custom, where it was, we all got into this business because we weren't making money on our, in our bands or doing something else, so we needed a day job. And where I see the opportunity for residential dealers, residential programmers, any of the residential integrators themselves, it's an opportunity to expand on your craft. A lot of residential dealers, part of their Achilles heel and part of the knocks against them is that they are really bad at process, because their thought is, well, I'm dealing with a person. So if I'm dealing with a person and a personality and they love me because I'm me, you cannot run this section of the industry and technology off of a cult of personality. You can't do it just because you're a nice person that people like and you're the smartest person you think in the room. It doesn't fly. You are first and foremost responsible to be a professional and to increase your professional acumen, which means taking your cues from the commercial industry, which has been around a lot longer from a process standpoint. Stephen was knocking, IT managers and everything else. They got a job to do. Because again, if there's a security breach, you're talking lawsuits. You're talking jail time for instances where you cannot support whimsy. Residential, again, it's, I don't want to be dire about it, but at the same time, it's a little bit of a wake-up call that I have with resi people, which is you're dealing now. If you're getting into networking, you are dealing with huge liability issues. You're dealing with company killers if you take this with a lackadaisical approach. Not to say that it is, you come in and it's black clouds and thunderstorms with the client, but behind the scenes with your team, you better be upfront about it. You know, again, a couple of weeks ago, we had it on the show where an employee of a very large security integrator was tapping into accounts and was pulling up live video feeds of people's homes. That's huge. And again, why? The process didn't happen. Now imagine you're a smaller company. You don't have maybe the benefits of a CAD department, documentation, engineers. You know, there's a whole lot less double E's in Resi than there are in commercial. That's just the nature of it. I mean, we got into it from like Heather said, right? It's a relationship built business in Resi. It doesn't excuse you from being a professional. And that's where I kind of view the, kind of handing that information down, which is get your process down, get your documentation down. Our biggest thing during the pandemic and the whole work from home was the importance of how to give the client the tools to heal their system, because we were physically unable to enter the house. So all of the things that we were promoting 10 years ago, remote access, remote boot ability, writing program, and this comes down to the programming side, right? Your program should be written so that the system can heal itself, right? In the past 5 years, we've had the ability now, and Resi's a great example, right, with Oversee and Blue Bolt and all of these monitoring solutions. If you're not using that, if you're not promoting it, again, much now like the network makes sense to the end user, remote diagnostics, remote reboot, the ability to self-heal, the ability to, in your budget, say, our job is to deal with the problem before it happens. Because yes, you've got 3 children over here who are in the middle of a Zoom call, you're in a company work call, and all of a sudden you have a switch go down or you have an access point go down. These things are built in to protect the problem and to deal, because the problem will happen, right? And so with Resi, you have to focus with them. The biggest challenge I've had with Resi people is explaining to them that it's a when problem, not an if problem. And once you can learn how to translate the when problem with good documentation, good diagnostics, good, remote reset ability, and for the system itself to act as an organism, all of a sudden we've seen them step up their game and they're like, oh man, it's tough because I can't sell that. No, you can. Be a professional. And so that is really what I hope Resi is going to bring up, and it is up to us. It is up for the commercial. Because commercial guys knocks against Resi guys. Resi guys knocks against commercial guys, and government and education, and everybody. Everybody thinks they're the smartest people in the room. We're now at the point where it's like, hey, let's go ahead and bridge that knowledge. And so I view this, because of this darn pandemic, as really an opportunity to use an overused word of crowdsourcing. To be able to say, hey, look, we are in this together now, and our companies can do this together. We're still going to be different in our offerings, but now that client, whether they are in a huddle space or in their living room, is now looking for the same thing. And it's exciting, but be a darn professional. Just be a darn professional.
I couldn't agree more. I'll shoot it over to Stephen. I think we've all been in the situation where we're either at working with somebody in a commercial space and they say, hey, can you help me at my home, or vice versa, knowing that that you're working with different animals and different, I don't say the people are, I say the solutions are, how do you set expectations so that, because what commonly is talked about is, well, I have this at home, why can't I have this in the office? And I'm sure you've heard the reverse as well.
So my approach to that is actually really simple. You can have it in both as long as all the systems will work together. So there's no reason why you can't have the same technology or some version of that technology in your residential and your commercial at the same time. It's as like Rich said, as long as you manage the security side of it, that's the big deal. So yeah, there are some protocols that aren't supported in commercial because of the inherent dangers. The other thing is understanding, the client asked for, this is a tough question for me. I'm kind of stumbling through it because one of the mottos of my company is the answer is always yes. And I'm sorry about that. I make a fortune off of companies that tell their clients no. I love it. Anytime somebody says, oh, I just tell my client no, I'm like, thank you. You just made me a bunch of money. Because we focus on a holistic approach of the client is not necessarily when they come to you and they say, I want to use Spotify in my kitchen. What they're saying is they want to be able to easily access music in the kitchen. So you do the same thing in commercial and residential. The biggest difference is that in commercial you do have to deal with some of the IT infrastructure for the security side. But we've been doing that for years. Rich had a very good point where remote access, remote maintenance. I tell my clients whenever we present them with the maintenance plan, I say, you have two ways to approach your maintenance. Either way is fine with me. One way is we're proactive. I know you have a problem before you do. I get the notifications. We're big fans of Domotes, however you want to pronounce it. So we're big fans of that particular platform. It works incredibly well. I can watch certain devices. I can show reports to my client. So if my client says, well, Comcast is telling me they're fine, I can show it and go, well, Comcast is lying. So, which is, it happens. But I can show these reports. I can pull these things. And Rich said, have your network be self-healing. 100% it should be self-healing. There are protocols that you can build into our control systems that if they ping an IP address and it doesn't respond, it shoots a command over it. Power Cycle is a power strip. Oversee is really good at that. That's a platform that's actually really good. It's integrated into a lot of things. It's not one that I use personally, but I do recognize the strength in that. For us, we use other things. But the remote maintenance is incredibly powerful, and I don't understand. People in the residential industry have a tendency to just say, we'll just roll a truck. We'll just roll a truck. In the commercial world, you can't just roll a truck all the time. Because in a lot of these buildings, you have to get a security pass. You have to get, there has to be a housekeeper there because the homeowners are away or they're working. In commercial, you have to get security passes and things like that. In residential, they'll go, oh, I'll just come by there on Tuesday. Why? That's always been my question. I do a lot of mentoring in our industry, and I always ask people why. Why would you roll a truck in 3 days when if you had Domotes set up and you charged your customer, let's say you charge them $240 a year, okay, for that remote access? That's a win-win for both of you. They're paying for the service, you're using it, so instead of waiting 24, 36, 72 hours to respond to a customer's problem, you respond in 5 minutes. And I love that. I have a very, very Jerry Maguire kind of approach to business where it's very personal. I know we talked about a cult of personality, but honestly, it's not necessarily a cult of personality. I get what Rich is saying, and I agree with him. You can't build a business on that. But when clients hire a company, they're hiring us. So it kind of is a cult of personality. Like I have Pro Audio Georgia, Pro Audio Carolinas. I have a client that's been a client for 12 years. Every time she writes me a check, she says, what is the name of the company again? That's just how it is. They're buying us. So we have to be able to tell our clients, yes, manage expectations, do all the things it takes, but this remote Heather and Rich have both had amazing points today. This remote management is key, and if we can do it in commercial, which we've been doing for years in commercial, being able to dial in and look at things. Now we're doing that in residential, and I've been telling people for years to do it, and I love seeing it come along. We have a little over 200 clients in our Domotes account, and I had to give it its own email address because every time a outage happens in certain areas in Atlanta, I might get 600 notifications. But the thing is you set it up so that you call your client and you say, hey, Mr. and Ms. Smith, you had an internet outage today at 2 o'clock while you were at work. We dialed in, made sure the problem was corrected when you get home, check your Wi-Fi. Next year, when it's time to write that $240 check or $300, whatever you charge, they're not even going to think about it. They're going to say, oh, let me write that. And I have clients that will call me and say, don't forget to bill me for my maintenance. I use it. You constantly take care of it. So that is huge. And being responsible and professional in our industry is something that's a little lax anyway. So I see a lot of guys that just don't quite get that. They come in and their vocabulary sucks, or they're talking to a client and they don't really know how to approach a problem. So the professional side of this is huge, and part of that is setting your company up for success, being proactive instead of reactive. And if you want to build a company based off of strict processes, that's awesome. I am, and everyone on this broadcast and anyone who knows me knows I run a different kind of life and a different kind of company. I'm a different kind of dude, man. And so I do run my company off of personal relationships. My clients, they call me, I answer the phone. They send me Christmas and birthday presents, and it's more of a family for me. So it's a little different for me, but that doesn't mean that Rich is wrong. Rich is absolutely correct that most companies can't run that way. It takes a special kind of person to run a company that way. And, I want to point to the fact that, they say don't answer your phone after hours, or your customers will get the wrong impression. I tell people all the time, please don't answer your phone after hours, because I answer mine. And I make a huge amount of money from people that don't answer their phone after hours. But I'll also point out one more thing. Keep in mind, Elon Musk slept on the floor at the Tesla factory until he got the Model 3 out of production. So next time you think that you're being CEO-ish and smart by shutting your company down at 6 o'clock so you can read a book, keep in mind that the richest people in the world built their companies because they worked when everybody else was asleep.
I think that's probably a good place for us to wind up. I think that's great. And as the four of us are all in leadership roles and CEO roles in our companies, that's very good advice. And thanks. And I do agree that the hustle is what's important. And as long as you are being productive and doing the right things, that's you should get the payoff. With that said, I'd like to thank these guests for being part of today's show, and hopefully we'll have them on very soon again. This has been a great one. First, Stephen Bronner from Pro Audio Georgia. How can people get in touch with you, learn more about what you're doing? And I forgot to mention at the top, you're always somebody I think of in the fall when it's college football season. So I look forward to hearing about that as well.
Oh yeah, Gator Nation, baby, all day, every day. You can look me up, ProAudio_GA on Twitter. You can find me on Facebook. You can hit the website, ProAudioGeorgia.com or ProAudioCarolinas.com. We are everywhere. I work with tons of integrators. I take a lot of calls, and I love to introduce integrators to new companies, help you figure out your business practices, and just all around make this industry more fun. And if you want to reach out, I look forward to hearing from you. Or
just give him a call and he'll answer at any time.
Absolutely.
Just give me a call.
Should try that.
I'll answer. My phone number is right there on the website.
That voice is Heather Sidora. It's from Southtown Audio Video. Heather, thanks for being with us. How can people get in touch with you and learn more about your company?
Our company website is southtownav.com. You can find me on Twitter at tech_chi, as in a balance between life and technology. And on the rest of the socials. So look me up. I'm looking so forward to having live events again for those of us in the industry. I cannot wait to give everybody a hug, whether it's allowed or not.
And we're glad to have you on this show, and hopefully we can get you away from Resi Week more often and have you back sometime soon. And Rich, last but not least, how could people get in touch with you? And also if you have any summation from today's takeaways.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the first thing that I'm going to use this word because I think it's appropriate is I'm really proud of Heather. and where she's taken her career and her business. And I mean, this is a programming show.
Thanks, buddy.
And this is you're welcome. The crux of what we do is about control system programming and how we operate in the industry. And we've had only a handful of women, on this show. And Heather is a perfect example of the women in AV as a business owner, as a female CEO, but as somebody who's bridged the gap extremely well and has built a very nimble business on the things that we always talk about, right? We talk about being able to adapt and improvise and overcome and see what's there. And I don't know how many times I've always said is that you have to be, brutal with your weaknesses. Nothing good comes of worrying about where you're doing well. That's great. Be brutal with your weaknesses. And Heather took that without it being taking it personally, without the need to say, but I'm doing great. I'm doing awesome. She says, yeah, we're doing well. However, and attacked the however. And so kind of to tie this into the industry with this resimercial thing is, the programmers that are listening, the small programming shops, the integrators who are bridging one or the other who do this. Follow her example. Reach out to her. Because not only has she said what she's done, her numbers, her press, her case studies, she walks her talk. And that is something extremely critical to emulate, right? Being a mentor comes from, hey, I don't need to talk. I'm here to provide information and take you to the next step. And so from her moving to where she and I first started in our business relationship and then our personal relationship, I just got to say, I mean, honestly, Heather, I'm truly proud of what you've created because you have done it.
I've had great role models, Rich. I mean, you once said, one of the greatest, sometimes the most profitable job you have is the one you don't take. I still wear that on my sleeve. Steve, we had, how many years ago at Infocom did we have that conversation of a job that, and that we didn't connect, but you were a mentor to me and you said, here's what I would do. And having people and saying that you need help, I feel this sometimes. That's the biggest secret, is to say, hey, I don't know, let me ask. Or shouting out to another friend to say, hey, what would you do in this situation? Or have you ever encountered this? We have a great group here on both the residential and the commercial side. AVNation bridges both of those sides. And I would definitely say, get out of your own way and ask for help when you need it. And know where you want to be so you can get there. But thank you, Rich. Those are wonderful words. I'm going to go to bed now because my day can't get any better.
Thank you, and I would also second what Rich said. So, Rich, how can people get in touch with you and learn more about what you're doing?
You can type my name into the interwebs. It's always going to show up somewhere. You can find us on the website Progressive Design, but as I will say on every show at the end, I hope the best place you can find me is here on our suite of AVNation TV shows, whether it's with my partner here, Steve, at State of Control, or Resi Week, or AV Week, or the slew of other shows that we have. I think we all truly believe that, we do this because we love it. We don't do it because we're paid for it. But we do hope that, as these integrators and programmers and employees of companies who look to up their game can use us as a resource. So find us here and support our sponsors, please.
And I would say too, really quickly, as you get to a certain point in your career, it's just so fulfilling to give back and be able to help other people and let others benefit from your experiences, because we've all made mistakes, and hopefully, and those have probably been some of the biggest learning opportunities, but we also want to prevent others from stepping in some of the same holes. As Rich said, please visit the website, go and visit the sponsors, the supporters, those who make AVNation what it is and bring these shows on air. For me, you can reach me at Steve Greenblatt very simply on social media, or my company, Control Concepts, at controlconcepts.net. And one thing I'm very excited about is that, and this will come out right before CEDIA, and for the first time in a number of years, I'll be going to CEDIA this year. So I look forward to seeing all of you guys there and all those who are listening. So Please join us there, and AVNation will be covering the show, and we'll be having some fun. With that, that's what we have today on A State of Control.